Have you ever looked at something and just seen the truth, clear as day, while everyone else seemed blind to it? It can be frustrating. You notice patterns, you hear what people really mean, you feel the tension under their smiles. And when you try to say something, they look at you like you're the problem. The world doesn't like clarity. It says it does, but it doesn't. Most people don't really want truth. They want comfort. They want to feel safe, not challenged. So when you speak with honesty, when you point out what's obvious to you, it often lands like an attack. They say you're arrogant, cold, too much. And maybe you've felt that. Maybe you've tried to help someone see what you saw, only to end up pushed away, misunderstood, or even resented for it. But here's something to think about. What if the smartest thing to do is not to say everything you see? Schopenhauer believed this. He said that intelligence isn't just about knowing things. It's about knowing when to speak and when to stay silent. Sometimes silence is kindness. Sometimes holding back is strength, because speaking the truth isn't always helpful, especially when someone isn't ready to hear it. You don't have to prove you're right. You don't need to correct every mistake. You don't need to shine all the time. In fact, the brightest minds often choose to stay in the shadows, not because they're scared, but because they know not every battle is worth fighting. And maybe that's the beginning of real wisdom. Let's be honest, being smart makes people uncomfortable. Not always, but often enough that you start to notice. You ask one deep question, and suddenly the room goes quiet. You make one simple observation, and someone feels attacked. It's not because you were rude. It's because clarity can feel threatening. You didn't mean to challenge anyone. You just saw things clearly. But for some people, that's already too much. They might laugh it off. Change the subject. Make a small joke at your expense. Not because they hate you, but because you make them feel something they don't want to feel. Insecure. You didn't do anything wrong, but still, you end up feeling out of place. Too intense, too serious, too different. And that hurts, because deep down, all you wanted was connection. But instead, you get distance. This is the quiet pain of many intelligent people. To be left out, not because you're wrong, but because you're too right. So what do? You could keep pushing, keep proving, keep correcting everyone. But Schopenhauer would offer a different path. Step back, let others feel comfortable. Let them speak, even if they're wrong, even if you know better. Not because you're giving up, but because you're choosing peace over pride. There's strength in being gentle. There's wisdom in being quiet. There's power in being underestimated. And sometimes, the smartest thing you can do is let them believe they know more than you. Because when you stop trying to be understood by everyone, you begin to understand yourself more deeply. And that's where your real power begins. Have you ever known you were right, but chose not to say anything? It takes strength, doesn't it? Because everything inside you wants to speak, to correct, to make it clear. But instead, you take a breath and stay quiet. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. Most people think power is about speaking louder, but real power? It's knowing when to stay silent. Not every argument needs you. Not every mistake needs fixing. Not every room deserves your full light. Sometimes letting things play out on their own, is the smartest move. Why? Because people rarely change their minds when they feel corrected. They only change when they feel like they arrived at the truth on their own. So let them. Let them talk. Let them believe what they believe. Let them feel like they're right. Even when you know better. Because you're not here to fight every battle. You're not here to prove your intelligence to everyone. You're here to protect your energy. To focus on what truly matters. And here's the thing. You don't lose anything by staying quiet, but you gain peace. You gain clarity. You gain control. Schopenhauer called this the art of pretending to be a fool. Not because you are one, but because it's sometimes the only way to move freely in a world full of egos. Let others take the stage. Let others shine too soon. You stay in the back, watching, waiting, listening. And when the moment is right, you move, not with noise, but with precision. Because real power doesn't need to shout. It only needs to be ready. Let me ask you something. What if the best position you could be in is the one where no one sees you coming? When people underestimate you, you're free. You're not a target. You're not a threat. You're just there, quiet, watching, learning. And that's a gift. Because while others fight for attention, you're gathering information. While they talk over each other, you're listening. While they show off their power, you're saving years. In nature, the quiet animals survive. The snake doesn't hiss before it strikes. The tiger doesn't roar before it moves. The strongest ones stay hidden. Why should it be any different in human life? Invisibility isn't weakness, it's freedom. When you don't need to be the smartest in the room, you become the one who sees the room. You stop reacting. You start responding with intention, not emotion. And the less people expect from you, the more freedom you have to act on your own terms. This is what Schopenhauer understood, that in a loud, noisy world, the person who moves in silence holds real power. So don't fear being unnoticed. Don't fear being underestimated. Use it. Let others chase the spotlight. Let them burn out under it. You'll move when it matters. You'll speak when it counts, because you're not here to impress. You're here to last. Here's a truth many people never realize. The world doesn't treat you based on who you are. It treats you based on who it thinks you are. And that perception, you can shape it. You don't need to be seen as the smartest. You don't need everyone to know your abilities. Sometimes, the best move is to let them believe you're average. Let them think you don't know. Let them relax around you. Because when people don't see you as a threat, they stop guarding themselves. They speak more freely. They show you who they really are. And while they're busy performing, you're observing everything. You're learning how they move, how they think, where they're vulnerable. This isn't manipulation. It's awareness. It's understanding that in a world full of noise, you don't have to shout to be powerful. You just have to pay attention. Schopenhauer believed that intelligence, when used wisely, becomes invisible. It moves through the room quietly. It shapes the conversation without dominating it. You don't need to win arguments. You don't need to correct people in public. You just need to guide the room with presence. Let your calm speak louder than your words. Because true influence isn't loud. It's felt. It's quiet, subtle, undeniable. So ask yourself, do you want to be seen? Or do you want to see? The ones who win in the long run aren't the ones trying to prove themselves. They're the ones shaping perception without anyone even realizing it. Let's talk about ego. Most people want to be right. They want to be respected. They want others to know how smart they are. But here's the thing. Wanting to prove yourself all the time, that's not power. That's insecurity. Real strength doesn't need validation. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't need to win every argument. Sometimes, the wisest thing you can do is walk away. Let them believe what they want. Let them hold on to their opinions. Because you know who you are. You don't need to win in their eyes. You've already won in silence. Schopenhauer understood this. He saw how much suffering comes from the need to be right, from the need to be understood, from the need to prove. But when you let go of that, you unlock a new kind of freedom. You stop reacting. You stop wasting energy. You stop trying to control what others think. And suddenly, you have space to breathe, to think, to grow. That's the difference between intelligence and wisdom. Intelligence wants to speak. Wisdom knows when to be quiet. Intelligence argues. Wisdom listens. Intelligence shines. Wisdom glows, softly, steadily, without needing to be seen. So ask yourself, do you want to feel right in the moment? Or do you want to live right in the long run? Because peace is worth more than pride. And those who master their ego win without ever needing to fight. There's a game being played in every conversation, but most people don't see it. They're too busy talking, too busy proving, too busy reacting. But the wise, they watch. They don't need to lead the room with volume. They lead it with presence, with timing, with subtle influence. The real game isn't about being the center of attention. It's about knowing how the room moves and guiding it without force. Have you ever noticed how powerful some people seem even when they say very little? That's not luck, that's mastery. They don't control people, they create space. They ask questions instead of giving orders. They plant ideas gently and let others believe the idea was their own. That's how true influence works. It doesn't feel like control. It feels natural. It feels like your own thought, even when it was carefully placed there. This isn't manipulation. It's emotional intelligence. It's respect for the other person's mind while still leading the direction. Schopenhauer would say, you don't need to fight to lead. You don't need to shine to win. You just need to understand people deeper than they understand themselves. And if you do that, you'll never need to force anything. Because by the time they realize your influence, you've already shaped the outcome. So the question becomes, do you want the spotlight or do you want results? Because the ones who move quietly are the ones who set the rules. So now, maybe something inside you feels seen. Maybe this wasn't just a video, maybe it was a mirror. Because deep down, you've always known you weren't like everyone else. You saw too much, felt too deeply, spoke too honestly. And somehow, it cost you. Not because you were wrong, but because the world wasn't ready. So you began to hold it in. You learned to smile, to nod, to play along. Not to deceive, but to protect your peace. You felt that silence was safer than being misunderstood, and it was. But now you understand. It's not just survival. It's strategy. It's wisdom. It's power, disguised as stillness. You don't need to fight for attention. You don't need to prove yourself to anyone. You're not here to impress. You're here to move differently. That's what Schopenhauer saw so clearly. That the loudest people aren't the ones who shape the world. The ones who truly shape it do so quietly. They're not in every debate. They're not chasing approval. They're not performing intelligence. They are simply observing, waiting, acting only when it matters. And that's who you are, too. You don't have to hide who you are, but you also don't have to hand it out to everyone who asks. Let them wonder. Let them underestimate. Let them think you're harmless. Because while they chase validation, you'll be building something real. Let your silence be your shield. Let your timing be your sword. Move like water, soft but unstoppable. And remember this, in a world full of noise, being calm is radical, being patient is powerful, and pretending to be a fool might be the brightest move you ever make. So take this message with you, not as advice, but as a quiet reminder of who you've always been. You don't need to shout. You don't need to explain. You don't need to be understood by the crowd. You only need to stay true to the deeper part of you. The part that sees beyond words, that moves in silence, that waits, and strikes only when the moment is right. Because the ones who move with patience and strategy, the ones who choose to disappear when it's loud and return when it's quiet, they are the ones no one sees coming. And they are the ones who change everything. So, if you felt this message in your bones, if it stirred something quiet but strong inside you, leave a simple phrase in the comments. Silence is my advantage. That way, I'll know you're not just watching, you're becoming. And if you're ready to keep moving differently, stay close. What's coming next is only for those who are done playing small. The world isn't won by the loudest. It's won by those who know exactly when to stay quiet and exactly when to strike. See you in the next one.